the first thing we're going to look at is the application form. The companies with less than 25 people, we color-coded them so you don't get confused when you pull them off on the internet, or you can take them with you if you haven't started. The smaller companies with 24 or less employees have the red and orange application and guide, and the larger companies, 25 plus, that includes charities, of 25 or more employees, have the blue. The application guides are exactly the same, forms are exactly the same. So I'm going to quickly go over it and the instructions, and this has to be included with your application and a copy with all your copies. Sometimes people give us one copy and then you have to turn in 6 copies of the application itself. But the judges need this. The copies are what goes to the judges. You will have a set of judges judging your applications. They do it individually. They're given judges score sheets, and you'll see there's points. And then when they're done, we bring that group together and we tally points, and they discuss it, and they pick a winner. The other thing I want you to know, even if you don't win, the judges have the option of picking a second place, which is called an award of distinction. And you get awarded at the event with a beautiful award, even if you don't get first place. And you can apply again next year if you're second place. And you can also get a third place, which is a bronze award of merit. And same thing, get a beautiful award at the event. You're honored, but you can come back next year and apply. Sometimes there's a tie and there's 2 Integrity Award winners in a category. If they can't decide, we'd rather award more than fewer. So we're here. And Jeff and I in the Better Business Bureau have nothing to do with what the judges decide. We run it. We get all the things to the judges. We give them their instructions, just like we're doing with you, and then we stay out of it. We only check and make sure that you have an A rating. Charities don't have ratings, so don't worry about it. But businesses have to have at least an A rating, but I'm sure you all do. You do not have to be a BBB accredited business. You don't have to be a member to apply. This is through our foundation, and any business in Omaha is welcome to enter this contest. So many times we have businesses that win that aren't accredited businesses. So we'll get going. Any questions about that? Okay, on the guide, just, you can, if you do it online, it's got typable fields. You can type it online and then print it off. These aren't submittable online, but you can type them and then print them off. There's just too much. We would be overwhelmed if everybody brought them in online. I think I'd go crazy. So the hard copies are really helpful for us to get them to the judges and keep them separated by category. So you just fill in everything. You check what category you're in. Small businesses have 3 categories, so there can be award if we have applicants in each of those 3 categories. There can be award in each of those 3 categories. It's not just one award for businesses 24 or less. There is a category for 1 to 4 businesses, plus a charity award for the small businesses. And then there's 4 business categories for large business, 25 to 99, 100 to 249, 250 to 499, and 500 plus. So there's 5 possible awards there. We don't always get applications because there's so many categories in all of those. But if there's even one application, they'll be judged separately from the other ones. And the judges will decide, because they're very, very experienced, whether that application meets the standards. So anyone has a chance to win, okay? It's not the numbers, it's the quality of the application. All right, so please fill in everything. If you don't type it, please print so we can read it. And then you need to sign. Some people forget to sign it. We need your signature. And especially the contact person regarding the entry, because the CEO of the larger companies is rarely the contact person for the application. So you all are probably the contact people for the application. So it might be different, especially for large companies, the information at the top and the information right in here. Okay, the instructions. Your entry, including this application form, must be received by Monday, July 8th. Here's a secret, because you're here, you know it. If something happens, and it does all the time, I've been doing this for 24 years. If at the last minute you're really cramped and you can't get it done by the 8th, give me a call by the 8th or before, and I will give you 1 week extension. But you have to call and let me know, because things do happen. So we have a grace period in there. But if it's not in, once they go to the judges, I can't do anything about it. I give it a week. Yes?
I'm sorry, I came in a little bit late and I didn't catch your name or contact information.
Oh, I'm Margo Riekes, and my name is on the application guide.
Okay.
You'll find it. It's written in a lot of places.
Thank you, Margo.
I'm the one you can call if you have questions. If you want to come and meet privately, if you want me to go over something, just make an appointment and we'll get together here. Okay?
Very good. Thank you, Margo.
Yeah. So I'm here to help. Before I worked at the Better Business Bureau, I was a teacher. I'm happy to help. All right, 1 entry must be typed and submitted in a binder. We're asking for the smaller binders, a 1-inch. You need to provide 6 additional unbound copies without sleeves. Please do not put sleeves. You don't have to go to the trouble of putting every sheet in a sleeve. It's time consuming, it's not necessary, nobody needs it. Every judge gets 1 copy, nothing's going to happen to them. So you don't have to put anything, even the main one, in sleeves. No plastic, okay? And then retain a copy or just keep it on your computer for future reference, because if you don't win and you want to go back, a lot of the stuff can be reused. It makes it easier. All right, every required judging category on page 2 on the back here, and we'll go over this, must be addressed separately with the title of the category at the top of the page. Is the Makovica one here?
Yeah.
If we'll hold it up, so you can see. This company won in both Omaha and Lincoln last year, and they had different judges and everything. They applied because they have offices in both places, and they got an award both places. This is a model application. It really is. See, this is the first category. See how they labeled it? Judges know right what they're looking at. And then they wrote the question out, and then they answered it. So it's very easy. Just think if you're a judge and you might have 8 to 10 of these to read, which ones are you going to give the most attention to? The ones that are easier to read, that they can follow. They shouldn't have to search for the answers. And let me tell you, they do sometimes, and they find them in the weirdest places. Doesn't help you. So, and I can pass this around. You can glance at it while I'm talking. Okay. You need label tabs. You can see that all of these have tabs, and your copies have to have tabs too. That's also to help the judges, corresponding to the categories. And for each criteria addressed in the judging category, state the title of the criteria at the top of the page and then type your responses below. All type documentation must have 1-inch margins and maybe single space. Please use double spaces between criteria. Use 11 or 12 point font, Times Roman, Arial, or Verdana. With the exception of titles and page headers, they can be larger. Additional materials may include photos, copies or excerpts from documents, mission, value, or vision statements, and any other documentation needed to provide support for your narrative, as long as you do not exceed the stated page limits for your category. Please do not submit. The big companies have handbooks. Don't say, see page 12 of the handbook. Instead, copy page 12 of the handbook and put it in there and say, here's our mission statement, or write it out. But you might have something in your handbooks that is really specific towards ethics that you want to share with the judges. Copy it and put it in to the part of the application that asks for business ethical practices.
Is this intro page that they did, it's just the title count as one of their pages in that category?
No, that doesn't count. The title page doesn't count.
So why is this technical?
Good question. No, your title page doesn't count. Okay? No. The only thing that counts is your text pages. All right? Applications that exceed the stated page limit will have points deducted. 1 point per page over the maximum number in each judging category. And although there are choices on both applications, you don't get extra points if you think you can answer both of them. If you're given A1 or A2, you have to pick. You can't say, gee, I can answer both of these, they'll give me extra points. They won't. So pick the one you can address best. They count the same, and answer that one. And the smaller companies have a little more choice than the larger companies, but the large companies have choice too. We went through a whole study about 2 years ago and created a judging form with more choices because every company is different. And there were enough people working on it in all sizes of businesses that they decided that there was not a question on here that every company can't answer if they want this award. So, because there are choices. You might not be able to answer A, but A1, but you obviously would be able to answer A2 by the way it's stated, okay? And you'll see that when we go through that. Judges will not take DVDs, CDs, any web-based products. If you have something from your website that you want to share, and when we get to that advertising part of it, communications part of it, you can take a screenshot and put it in as an example. But don't give them a ad on a thumb drive or something. They're not going to play it. But you can give the text of an ad if it has to do with ethics. And we'll get to that part when we get to that part of the application. Any questions about the rules for the application following the guide? Now, for all companies have to do on the back organizational summary, ethical management practices, decision-making, conflict resolution, communication and marketing practices, and community relations. Only the 501c3s, and we have several of you here, have to do 6. You are in your own category. You don't get judged with businesses. You get more points, but you have to address part 6. You can do that at the end. comes after 5. And then the 7th part is a judge's assessment. You can be given up to 30 extra points for following directions, having a really good application that they can follow, if they really like what you say, if they love your mission statement, if they feel you follow through with your mission statement, they will give you extra points. So you can get up to 30. They're never that generous, though, but they'll give you extra points for the good parts, the extra really good parts. And then you will get feedback after the event, after everything's over. You'll get your judging sheets back and you'll see what they said. So there's always feedback. We aren't going to leave you in the lurch here. Sometimes it takes Jeff and me a while to get them to you, depending on the number of applicants, because it takes some time, but we'll get them to you. Any questions about that? All right, we're going to go to the application guide. The first part of the application guide is your organizational structure, and that's the easiest part. Both large companies and smaller companies have A, B, and C to answer. They're the same. A is provide a brief description of your organization's creation, the intention of the founders, and how later leaders have maintained the original vision or changed course to address new conditions. Tell your unique story, how you came about. That's 2 points. For charities, describe your leadership board structure. For B, describe how your organization is run, led. That is different for every company. Small businesses usually just say, we're a small business, the president or the owner or what runs the company. Big businesses might have boards. It's different for everybody. So just tell how you run your business. And for charities, you can describe your leadership board, the structure, the specific functions of your board, what they're involved in, what they have purview over, or what they don't have purview over, and just give a brief description of your board. Charity boards are different usually than for-profit boards. Then C, and this is the time you should brag. Don't be afraid to brag. You're applying for an integrity award. If you don't think you should win it, whether you were nominated or not, a lot of you were nominated, which is really great. But think about why you think you were nominated. If you were, and even if you weren't, what about your organization is unique that makes you eligible for this award? You wouldn't be here if you didn't think you were. And tell the judges why. Okay? Now D is for, and we have several people here that have won before. If you have won an integrity award in the past, and you can apply a second time, but you have to wait at least 3 calendar years to come back in. If you have won, you have to address D too. So I think Vision to Voice is one. Anybody else here won? Yeah, okay, all right. So you can circle D, you have to do it. Everyone else, no, you can cross it out. Okay, the second part is the ethical business management. Now if you look at that, and that starts a new section, there's an A1 and an A2, right? You have a choice. Then the large companies have a B and a C. The smaller companies only have a B. For the small companies, you have to pick 4 out of the 8 that are listed. There are 8 things that you should address or can address. You pick the 4 you can best address because they do not apply to every company. They all count the same. Pick any 4. But if you pick 1, under ethical management practices, B, put 1, fosters positive relationships with customers, vendors, suppliers, and then write how you do it. But if then you go to 3, then you say 3 next, so the judges don't get mixed up. Use the number that's on here. Large companies, you have to address 6 of the 10. You have 10 choices. You pick your 6. Any questions about that? Okay, now we're going to turn it over to our wonderful Business Ethics Alliance, Courtney. This is the decision-making conflict resolution. And for the smaller companies, you only have to pick 1 situation in ethical decision-making in 1 of 3 categories. You only have to pick 1. You can either address something, an ethical dilemma with customers or service recipients or employees or volunteers or vendors, suppliers. Most people choose customers, but it can be any one of those 3. And then you have to answer the things below. There are 5 things you have to address. And again, format makes it really easy. Where is the Macavicum? They did a chart. Here they chose customers, and then they wrote what the dilemma was. Then here they have their choices in the first column. They put the pros of each of those choices and the cons of each of those choices. Really easy for the judges to read. So here's the problem. Here are the choices. This is the pros of each choice. This is the cons of each choice. And then the resources they used and the outcome, all labeled. And then they went on to their second one because they're a larger company. They had to do 2. Smaller companies only have to do 1. Now we're going to go into what is an ethical problem. And that's where companies get stuck. So I'm turning it over to Courtney, and she will give you some instruction.
Thanks, Margo. Hi, thanks for joining us today. My name is Courtney. I'm from the Business Ethics Alliance. I'm joined today by Krishna. She is our new Marketing and Communications Manager. So you might hear from her occasionally, run into her at different events. She's coming with me to kind of get the feel for things at the Alliance. I'll talk a little bit more about us as an organization toward the end, but I really want to talk today about what an ethical dilemma is. As Margo said, that's oddly enough a confusing thing for some people, and it's important that you understand the pieces of it so that you can write about it confidently. So at the Alliance, we talk about 2 different reasons that unethical choices are made. Let me address the one that we're not talking about today. That's called an ethical commitment. These are decisions in which there's a clear right and wrong answer. So I see a wallet on the street. Is the right thing to do to attempt to return it to who it belongs to or to keep it for myself? Now, I'm not saying the right choice is always made there, but I think most of us would agree with what the ethical decision would be, right? That is not a dilemma. Okay, that is an issue of, are you committed to your values? Are you committed to honesty, right? Are you committed to making sure that everything is fair? Are you committed to making sure everyone has their due? If you make the other choice there, then you failed to commit to those values. Does that make sense? Excellent. So that is in contrast to ethical dilemmas, in which there's not a clear answer because they could all be right, depending on what values you choose to commit to, right? So this is sort of being stuck between a rock and a hard place. I have at least 2 different options that I could take. They're mutually exclusive. I could justify either one based on ethics, but I have to pick one, which means one of my values is going to lose out, right? So it's not a really great position to be in. With ethical commitment, there's not quite that queasiness. In an ethical dilemma, you feel anxious because you know that something's going to be lost there. You with me so far? Wonderful. So to demonstrate this, I'm going to ask you to play a little game with me. So bear with me for a few minutes here. Let's pretend we're throwing a dinner party, and the guest list is not limited by time, space, physics, life and death, anything like that. We get to pick whoever the heck we want to come to this party, but we can only pick 3 of these people. Okay, we can only choose 3 from this list. Who would you like to pick? Who are we inviting? Anybody?
Oprah,
Why Oprah?
because she's one of the most powerful women out there.
She'll probably give you a car.
Very well spoken. Yeah.
Great, yeah, why not Oprah, right? Great, so we got Oprah. Who else are we going to invite?
Warren Buffett,
Why?
the Oracle of Omaha.
Right, well, you're probably going to pick his brain, right?
Yeah, I also think he's a pretty down-to-earth guy, but he's also smart from a common sense kind of standpoint. And I
Right.
think he probably has exhibited a moral character in the past, so a good example.
Right, tries to live by his values, right? Drinks Coke with breakfast, but I mean, that's not really an ethical issue. One more. Who else are we going to invite?
Tom Osborne.
Who said that? Why Tom?
I think he epitomizes everything that is ethical, at least in his public life, you know.
Nice. Yeah, we agree. We actually just gave him a Beacon of Ethics award recently. Yep, so we agree. Great, so we've got Oprah, Warren, and Tom, in addition to all of us. That's going to be a great party, I think, personally. Now, would you actively not choose any of these others? I mean, would you just absolutely say,
Lady Gaga, no.
no? Okay.
That should be fascinating.
Right, so we're not going to invite her, but she would add something, right? That'd be a different kind of party,
Yep.
for sure. It'd change the tenor of the party. Albert Einstein, I mean, why not? Right? I'm not actively choosing to not invite him, but that's just not the kind of party we're throwing, right? If we're going to be picking someone's brain, it's going to be Warren, because we want to know should we be doing with our business. So the whole idea here is that your choices, your decisions, are motivated by values and principles. Okay? So the kind of party that we're wanting motivated the choices that we made here. We didn't actively choose not to invite Serena Williams. It just wasn't that sort of party. Right? So sort of think of that as sort of your mission statement, maybe. Right? What am I trying to accomplish, and what choices am I going to make based on that goal that I have? Now, as you notice in that activity, not all of those decision-making factors were based on ethics. We did bring up ethics with Warren and Tom, but we weren't necessarily thinking, Oprah, she's so moral. She strikes me as being very ethical, but I'm more interested, honestly, in how in the world has she done what she's done. I kind of want to pick her brain about where she gets her strength from. So there are 2 kinds of values. There are ethical values, and those are the ones we tend to think of, but there are non-ethical or amoral values too. And we don't mean that they're bad, right? They're not unethical as in wrong, but they're values that are based in other things. Maybe they're business values. So efficiency. I want my team to be efficient, but that's not an ethical concern, right? I want my team to be innovative, but that's not an ethical principle. On the other hand, if I'm saying that I want my team to behave in ways that are respectful, that is very much based in ethics. How to treat other people with dignity. That's about right versus wrong. Things like freedom and responsibility, fairness, making sure that everyone gets the same benefits and is subject to the same rules. Being honest, making sure that we have trustworthiness about us. Those are all ethical concerns. So one piece of advice that I would give you, in addition to choosing a dilemma that's based on a right versus right decision, is to make sure that it's about ethical values and not just business values. So if you say, well, we had this choice to make, but it would have been really expensive, well, that's not a conflict of values. That's a conflict of, here's a thing I want, but I can't afford it, right? Now, if you framed it differently, if you framed it as, if I make this choice, I help a lot of people, but if I do it and it doesn't go well and I lose a lot of money, then I can't help the people that I'm currently trying to help, then it might become an ethical issue, right? So making sure you frame it with ethics words. Any questions so far? So some different dilemmas, times that our values might be in conflict with one another. Not doing any harm versus actively doing good. Being fair versus doing good. I'll give you an example from my own experience. Like Margo, I used to be a teacher. I was a writing teacher for a long time. And inevitably, every semester, there would be a student that approached me and said, I'm so sorry, Miss Musto, but I didn't get this paper done. Here's why. And sometimes there was a compelling reason and sometimes there wasn't. But I have a very strict no late work policy. I give you all kinds of opportunities to do things, and turning them in late is not one of them. So on the one hand, I can say, well, in fairness to everyone else in the class, we're going to stick by this rule because everyone else has been subjected to it. So no, you can't have an extension and turn this in late. So you get a 0. But I also want to do right by that student. I want to give them an opportunity to sort of make up for the obstacles that they've encountered that kept them from getting their work done. I'm totally committed to making sure that if you had an unexpected hardship, that you should have an extra opportunity. But those things are mutually exclusive. I can't do one and the other. Maybe. Right? So it's two values that are in conflict. It's not just, no, you can't do it because it's the rules. It's, well, this wouldn't be fair to everyone else. Or, okay, it might not be fair, but it's not going to do you any good to get a 0 on this paper. So do you see how there are ethical concerns that are pitting against one another in this decision? That's what makes it a dilemma. Now, is there something else I could do in that situation? Maybe some third option? Instead of you either get a 0,
deduct some points.
Right, so I could say, well, okay, I'll take it late, but you're not going to get the same opportunity to earn points that everyone else got because that's not fair. So I might say, turn it in, but whatever grade you get, it's 1 grade lower. What other options might I have?
Allow an extension for everyone else.
Right, so if fairness is my concern, but I also want to do good, I could say, well, okay, you're going to get a 0 on this paper, but here's this extra credit opportunity and everyone's going to have access to it. It's not just you. So I'm trying to honor both values that before were in conflict with one another. Now they're not in conflict. So we're going to look at a little scenario here. Our friend Bob, who's in a little bit of a pickle. And as I read this, I want you to think about what are the values that are conflicting here? What are the things that Bob tries to live up to, but he's being forced to choose between them? So Bob's boss told him that Gary, who happens to be Bob's best friend and coworker, is going to be let go at the end of the quarter. The boss says that Bob can't tell anyone, and shortly after this conversation, Gary tells Bob that he's getting ready to buy a house for his growing family. So why is this a pickle for Bob? What's at stake here?
Loyalty to Gary.
Okay, so Gary's my friend. I know that he's about to lose his job, but also he's about to purchase a home. Seems like he'd probably want an income during that process. I want to be loyal to him and make sure that I'm telling him what I know so that he doesn't make a terrible decision, right?
That loyalty is more personal ethics, whereas organizational or professional ethics would be to the organization,
Right.
business.
So that's a very good thing to bring up. At the Alliance, we think of different realms of ethics. Personal is one of them. So for instance, Kristen and I might have different morals about something like euthanasia, right? She might say, yes, that's absolutely something that we should embrace. I might say, no, absolutely not, in no case. That's my personal belief. Organizational ethics are different, though. Those are the core values that your organization sets out and says, this is who we are, right? You might not necessarily hold the same values, but as an employee, these are your values here in this office. So yeah, there's also loyalty to Gary's boss.
Or the profession.
Right, exactly. So you're maybe a lawyer, right? And there's certain things you can't do. Otherwise, bye-bye, bar association. So yeah, Bob is stuck here. He might want to be loyal to his friend. That's a personal issue. He wants to be loyal to that person. But also, his boss is telling him to, please do not share this. Right? You cannot tell him. So he's in a pickle here, and that's what makes it a dilemma. Right? Now, you could argue that, well, disobeying an order from your boss is wrong. That's against the rules. But notice that we're framing it as which value does he want to pursue, right? Breaking the rule in this case is also loyalty to the friend. So it's not so much about what's against the policy, but about which value are you pursuing in your decision-making process. Which brings us to our decision-making model. This is something you can download on our website, and I'll give you that address in a little bit. But we've got sort of a three-tiered system that will help you gather information and sort of weigh pros and cons, making sure you're prioritizing your values, and that you're asking questions that you might not have thought to ask. So at the first step, it's really important to understand exactly what the dilemma is. So our first step is to actually define what those conflicting values are. And we've already done that, right? We said loyalty to friend versus loyalty to boss. Right? Those are both things that I think we would all argue are ethical under the right circumstances, right? So there's a conflict there. He's stuck between a rock and a hard place. Situational facts, though. Really all we know here is that Bob has information that was given to him by his boss, and he's not supposed to share it, and Gary might need that information so he doesn't buy this house. What do we not know? What information is missing here that might change things for us?
Maybe it doesn't matter if he has this job, whether he buys the house.
Right. Maybe Gary is independently wealthy, right? Maybe he's related to Warren. I don't know. He might not need that job. What else do we not know?
That absolutely he's going to be let go. Do we?
Well, I suppose there's always a chance that, well, depending on what the reason is, maybe that'll change. Maybe right now the reasoning is, let's say, based on seniority, but maybe in a few weeks before that deadline, maybe they'll decide, well, actually we're going to base it on this other criteria. So yeah, we don't know for sure, necessarily. What else don't we know?
We don't know that Bob's planning on getting another job. Or Gary's
Or Gary?
planning on getting another job. He might be buying a house in another market, planning on moving, seeking other employment.
Right. Maybe he's buying a house in the town that he's going to where he has a new job waiting for him. And lo and behold, we would have broken our loyalty to our boss, and Gary doesn't even care. Right? That would be bad news. What is Bob's job? What's his role within this organization? What if he's in HR? And that's why his boss told him. And so back to what Cliff said about organizational and professional ethics. If I'm a human resources person, and all of a sudden I'm breaking this kind of personnel policy, am I going to be fired next? Because I broke that policy. I violated the values of my own profession and my organization. So would I be willing to jeopardize that for this information for Gary, which, as we've pointed out, may or may not be relevant, right? So figuring out what things do you not know that would change the entire situation for you, because that might make one value rise really, really high in your priorities, and the other one falls away because it's no longer a concern. Not because you're saying it's not important, but it just doesn't apply to this situation. Identifying the stakeholders. Obviously Gary and Bob and the boss, right? Those are very obvious stakeholders here. But you might also consider Gary's family. So if he does need that job because he's not related to Warren, right? And maybe this is the only income in their household, all of a sudden that's affecting way more people, right? On the flip side, we might think about the rest of the organization. So if Bob lets this information slip and everyone panics because now we're wondering, is there going to be a whole lot of layoffs? Well, now I'm introducing risk to the entire organization, right? Also Bob himself. As we identified earlier, maybe if he shares this information, his job is going to be at risk, and now the rest of his family are stakeholders as well. So figuring out who all is affected, again, might decide which of those values sort of rises up to highest priority, and which one is maybe something that we cannot worry about. The next stage is imagining all your options. So like we did earlier with the student paper example, we identify the really obvious black and white solutions. You do this or you do that. They're mutually exclusive, we can't do both of those. So Bob tells Gary or he doesn't tell Gary. Those are the really obvious choices. But next, we can maybe think about what are some third options that we might consider. What's an outside the box idea? So with the paper, we said, well, maybe turn it in late but get a reduced grade, or maybe everyone gets a chance at extra credit. All of those would work. It falls somewhere in the middle of our two black and white choices. What about for Bob? Is there anything creative that Bob could do instead of either spilling the beans or kind of biting his tongue?
You could go back and talk to Bob about, hey, I know that Gary's buying this house. Is there a way that you could talk to him sooner or something?
Right, so don't necessarily change your decision, because for all we know, maybe Gary's been embezzling money from the company and he needs to go, right? So maybe making the decision and saying, okay, do we have to wait till the end of the quarter? Maybe we can fast track this so that Gary can get his ducks in a row. That's a third option that doesn't necessarily involve breaking loyalty to either one of these people. Are there any other creative solutions we could do?
Have Gary check in with his boss to see just, hey, I'm getting ready to buy this new house, get kind of a state of the union of where his position is and
Right.
things like that.
Really
Make sure
encourage
along-
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like really strongly say, Gary, I think you should check in, man.
Yeah.
Just make sure everything's cool. Those are all really great ideas. You'll notice that a lot of those, have to do with gathering those facts that we don't have yet. So asking boss if, hey, is there some way that we could alter the way this information is rolled out? Or saying to Gary, you know what, like let's talk through this. Are you guys really ready for this house? I mean, I don't know. Or encouraging him to check in. Yeah.
This isn't really a solution, but if you were in an ethical dilemma, I think sometimes people assume that you have to make that decision alone. So you could reach out to a mentor, an organization, someone that could
Absolutely.
give you some helpful advice.
Absolutely. I don't have that one here. That is absolutely a great idea, because when you're in that sort of queasy state that being stuck between a rock and a hard place induces, you do feel alone. Especially if it does involve, you brought up earlier that one of these is kind of personal. If part of it involves your personal beliefs or your personal relationships, it feels like it needs to be on your shoulders and that's it. It doesn't, right? I mean, Bob could even go back to his boss and say, you told me this, I happen to know this about Gary, I just feel terrible. I don't know what to do. But it doesn't even have to be someone in the organization. It could be a mentor. It could be a friend. It could be someone that you just trust.
Could be an alliance.
It could be the Business Ethics Alliance. Gosh, we should hire Cliff. So the third level of our decision-making model we call thinking far, wide, and high. And this is about thinking what's in it for us in the long haul. So I like to think of this in terms of 2-2-2. Is this going to matter in 2 weeks? Is it going to matter in 2 months? Is it going to matter in 2 years? So trying to parse out, is this just immediately important to me? Or is it truly important in the long run? Here, for Bob and Gary, maybe it is a long-term issue and not just immediate. Because if I let Gary do this and he finds out I knew all along, that friendship's over. On the other hand, if I do spill the beans and I end up losing my job, well, that's a long-term problem for my family as well. So thinking about in the long run, what's the best good for everyone involved? What option helps everyone get a little bit, even if they're not getting everything? So Gary might still lose his job, but does he know sooner rather than later so that he can make better choices? Thinking wide is thinking, you brought up professional and organizational ethics. Thinking about how does it involve those other stakeholders, so not just Bob and Gary and the boss, but everyone else at work, everyone else who is wondering, are we all going to get fired? So thinking about what is fair to all those different stakeholders. Thinking high is about thinking aspirationally. If my decision were printed on the front page of the Omaha World Herald, how would I feel about that? Would I be really proud of it? Or would I be a little bit embarrassed? Would I want to brag about this to my grandma? Or would I prefer she not find out about it? We found that sometimes pushes people, if they were kind of teeter-tottering on the edge of a decision before, they think about that and they realize, oh yeah, this is the one that makes me feel really good, even if I know it loses me something else. That's the one that I'm comfortable with. So this one's assessing sort of what is the least amount of bad you can live with, essentially. Excellent. So what questions can I answer? If you don't have them now, that's fine. Like Margo said, she is here to help. So a couple of things I would recommend. Again, making sure you use ethics words to frame your dilemma. So it's not just a business problem, it's actually a problem of conflicting values. You might consider using this decision-making model to narrate the dilemma. So, using this as sort of a narrative arc, essentially. Here was the problem, here's how I thought through it, here's how I eventually ended up making a decision, and why it's ethical. And finally, we obviously think you should go to businessethics.org and check out some of our resources. I have a couple here for you today. One is a card with all of our events on it. As you were going around the room, I recognized some names and some organizations. So if you're a friend of the Alliance, if you come to our events, maybe mention that in your application. That indicates that you're working toward doing ethical things for your culture. And then also our most important thing of 2019, our brand new event, Ethics Space. This is a full day conference dedicated to professional team development. So this is something that, if you want your team to have sort of a team building exercise, this would be a great event. Our theme this year is trust. So talking about what characters make someone trustworthy, how do you make sure that your teammates trust you and that you are able to trust them. So it's actually a harder thing than I think we give credit to. It's going to be a great day.
That is not what we're talking about here. So, yeah, in the course of your business career, choose one that, is really good. Because judges love to read those. Okay? We're going to move on to communication and marketing. Small businesses, yours is really easy, kind of straightforward. You have either an A or a B to do. The larger companies have 5 things to do. Actually, not really. You have A, it should have been A1, A2. So it's A1 or it says B, should have been an A. And then there's C. C1, should have been C2 and then D, but there are actually 3 that you have to address. And 2 of them are choices. And the last one is provide descriptions or examples of advertising and marketing materials that communicate your commitment to ethical practices through word of mouth, customer referrals, signage, television, radio, print, website, social media, etc. If you're a BBB accredited business and you have the BBB accredited seal on your website, or you have it on your truck, or on your stationery, take a screenshot or a picture of it and submit that. That shows that you're committed to business ethics by supporting the Better Business Bureau, because we're committed to trust in the marketplace, okay? You might have an advertisement that talks about the ethics of your company. You can submit the text of that ad. There's all kinds of things, a myriad of things, if you're creative and think about how you promote your business as an ethical business. What ethical words do you use to show that you have good values? One situation was remarkable. We were in Lincoln one year, because we do training in Lincoln too, and there was a small roofing company. And he's just sitting there and shaking his head, and he says, we get just 2 people. We don't have money for marketing. We don't have anything that shows that we're ethical. What do I do? And here, the name of the company was Integrity Roofing. And I looked at him, and he had it on his shirt. So I said, you're a walking advertisement for integrity. Just right. Take a picture of your shirt. Say, my employees all wear this shirt to work. And we better have integrity if we're going to walk around using that as our company's name. So that's something to think about. If you have questions, you can call me about these things. But be sure they have to do with ethics, not what you're selling, but how, if you're selling something, how you're selling it, how you're doing business. Use, like Courtney said, ethical words to describe your communications. And look, if you don't have them, maybe that's something you should address. Because people like to see that you're an ethical company and that you state that. You're not just out there for the money. Any questions about that part? Okay, the last part is community relations, and that is really one of the most important parts of your application besides the ethical decision making. The judges look at the ethical decision making to see if you really understand what ethics are, and that's why it's good that you were here today. But this is community relations, and a company that deserves an integrity award gives back to the community. And that's what the judges are looking for. And it's not just the CEO if you're a large company. One very large company did not win an integrity award once because they only listed the activities of the head of the company. Didn't talk about any of the other people and what the company as a whole does for the community. That was a huge, and they all knew that this company does a lot for the community. But they only listed what the CEO does. If you're a small company and you don't have time, maybe your employee, one of your employees coaches a little league team, or maybe you donate money to an organization every year, or maybe you work for the Salvation Army during the winter. There are so many things that you could do that you don't really think of. Individually, not just as a company, but things that the people in your organization are doing to help make Omaha a better place to live, work, and do business. And that's what they're looking at here. There's a question about pro bono work. What have you done that you haven't charged for? Why did you do this for nothing? What was the motivation behind that? So those are the kinds of things you're to think about in community service. And then the last part, it asks you to provide examples of awards received or charitable and community service projects, or a complimentary letter from others within organizations, industry, trade group. Maybe you've done something and somebody sent you a thank you for your work. And that would be acceptable. You can list the organizations your company belongs to. If you're a BBB accredited business, put that down. If you belong to the Chamber of Commerce, if you're attend Ethics Alliances, like Courtney said, events, add that. All people that come to the Ethics Alliance are called trustees. So being a trustee really isn't, but if you're on the board of the Ethics Alliance, that would be a position. A trustee is not a position. That's just what they call their members, because they don't charge, so their members are trustees. If you attend their events, you're a trustee. If you're on the board, that's something else. Is that clear? That's an important distinction that some people did not get quite right with their relationship with the Ethics Alliance, because it's not a dues-paying organization. Or if your organization has helped support one of the Ethics Alliance events, that would be a community service. That would be something you could list. And all of you have things that you do as individuals as well as an organization. In the Better Business Bureau, we do free shredding once or twice a year for the community. That's a company thing that we all do. But other people here all volunteer in other things at other times, and you can list those too. Just to show that your employees are giving back to the community is very important if you're a business of integrity. And that's about it. Any questions about anything we've gone over? Jeff, is there anything you'd like to say?
I just a few points to go back towards. In the beginning, especially with the application, just make it as easy for the judges as possible. That sounds really simple, but it's kind of like a psychological thing. You got to keep the judges in a good mood and make things as easy for them to find if they need reference back as possible. That'll go a long ways. We do sit in the judging, even though we don't participate. We do sit to answer any questions, and that's one of the biggest things. I couldn't find this, I couldn't find that. Because what these judges do a lot is they'll read through all the applications, and then they'll go back, read through them one more time, and then they'll judge them. So just make it as easy as for the judges as possible. The second big thing is don't try to tackle this all at once. Take a section a week or a section every 2 weeks. You got enough time to do that, to really take your time and go through this. Once you finish this section, really have, and you shouldn't be working on this alone, have one or two, maybe a team helping you with this. But if it's just yourself, make sure you have somebody outside of you or your team or even your company look at this and say, hey, did I really evaluate this section as well as I could have in my application? Because that'll be important, really important. In the ethical dilemma section, like Margo said, that's probably one of the most important. That separates a lot of good businesses from great businesses. So really pay attention there. And Courtney did a great job of explaining kind of what the ethical dilemma is. And lastly, I mean, like Margo said, we hope everybody wins. Chances are that won't happen, but it's okay that if you don't win. A lot of companies, there's only been maybe one or two that won on their first time applying. So we like to see this kind of as like an ethical audit to see what pieces are missing, what areas are you really strong in, and what areas can you grow in. And because no company's perfect, but it's about just keep going and becoming a stronger company ethically. So,
Do you receive your scores and notes from the judges that you can evaluate and go back and
Yes,
see where
yeah.
you were strong and weak and
Yep.
comments and things?
Absolutely.
Yep, it'll take a couple months, but you do get them back to evaluate. So,
We'll try to get them as soon as we can.
yeah.
We're the communications team for the entire BBB, the whole our whole region. So sometimes it takes us a little longer. But what Jeff said about getting somebody else to read what you wrote is really important. Or if you have multiple people, divide it up and assign things to people to help you. If you're writing it, you might want their input. And then have somebody outside read it and say, did I answer this question? Because very often, people come with really great answers, but they didn't answer the question. They wrote a beautiful something, but it wasn't about what was being asked. And that's important, because otherwise you're not going to get any points. So be sure that it addresses the criteria that you're addressing, and it's not off subject.
And tie every answer into ethics, because that's what this award is all about.
Right.
So,
It's about
mention-
integrity and ethics.
Mention those key words.
Yes. And actually, the whole application should go back to the very first organizational summary, which will show how you are ethical in your business. You've talked about your business, you talked about what you do, and now you're going to go describe the way you do it, the ethical way, the correct way of doing business. And for charities, it's a little harder because of their mission. Their mission is ethical to begin with, but they are a business too, and they have to do certain things to be ethical. So, and we all know of charities that haven't been and what's happened. So, in some ways, it's really harder to be a charity and apply for this than to be a for-profit business. But we have that separate section for charities, and they're judged just among charities. So it's not a competition between for-profit and not-for-profit.
And one other thing I just thought of, make sure, like, there's a difference between going above and beyond and just doing what's required by law. So that's a big comment that the judges say all the time. So.
Especially for financial institutions. Financial institutions are really governed by law. So they're looking for what you do as an organization that's beyond what's required by law. Some banks will come in and say, well, we do this, this, and this, and the judges know that this is required of them. They have to do it, or they're not a bank. So go beyond that. Think above and beyond what's required of you.